This is Lesson 18. I will solve multi-step word problems modeled with tape diagrams. So this lesson is going to be very similar to what we did yesterday. We're going to continue to solve multi-step word problems, and we're going to model them with tape diagrams. The only difference is yesterday we were doing, or in Lesson 17, we were doing additive word problems where we were comparing two objects or two things using the additive comparison. So we are not going to be working in our math journals again today. We're going to go right to our problem set. So once you get out problem set number 18, and you will notice that this is the very first problem on your problem set. So we're going to continue to use that RDW process where we read, draw, and write. So we're going to begin by reading this problem. In 1 year, a factory used 11,650 meters of cotton, 4,950 fewer meters of silk than cotton, and 3,500 fewer meters of wool than silk. How many meters in all were used of the three fabrics? I want you to ask yourselves, can you draw something? What can you draw, and what conclusions can you make from your drawing? It's really important that you don't skip the drawing portion. Even if you think you know what to do, do not skip the drawing. It will help you clarify your thinking. Get ready to write your math problems. Okay, so if you think you know what to do, go ahead and draw your model on your problem set. Then I want you to write a number statement from your diagram, and I want you to solve it. Now that you have drawn a model and you have written your number statement and you have solved it, now I want you to use estimation to check to see if your answer is reasonable. If your answer is not reasonable based on your estimate, go back and see if you can find your mistake. If it is reasonable, go ahead and write your answer as a statement. And remember, if you were stuck and you didn't know what to do, it's okay. On the next page, I'm going to help you. Okay, so I want you to take a look at this diagram. So you can see that, first of all, I drew three separate tape diagrams. You can look right here and see that C represents the amount of cotton, and then you can see that S represents the amount of silk, and then W represents the amount of wool. Now, C was the cotton was the only number that I had that I knew exactly how much cotton was made. So I went ahead and put 11,650 meters of cotton inside. Now, I knew that there was 4,950 fewer meters of silk than cotton, and I knew that there was 3,500 fewer meters of wool than silk. So because I knew the cotton, if I could take away the difference right here, I could find out how much silk there was, which was 6,700 meters. And then once I knew that this was 6,700, I could take away the 3,500, and I would know that there was 3,200 meters of wool. But notice that the question doesn't ask that. It asks how many meters in all were used. So that's where this becomes multi-step, and why at the very end I had to go all the way back and add all of those answers together. And that's where I got 21,550. Now this doesn't show where I estimated. So if I was going to estimate, then I would say that there were about, I would just say 10,000 meters of cotton, and I'd say that there was about 5,000 more meters of silk. So that would give me 5,000 meters of silk. And then I would say that there was about 4,000 meters more of wool, so that would give me 1,000 meters of wool. So I would come over here and I would have 10,000, 5,000, 1,000. This is just my estimate to check for reasonableness. So I'd have 10, 5, and 1, which would be 16,000. And you might be thinking, well, 16,000 is not really close to 20. But in all reality, considering that I rounded all four of these numbers, actually I rounded 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 numbers, it is reasonable. It's not super accurate, but it is reasonable. All right, let's take a look at problem number 2. So I want you to read the problem to yourself, and I want you to think to yourself, can you draw something? And then once you come up with a tape diagram to draw, I want you to think about what conclusions can you make from your drawing. Once you have your drawing, I want you to try to write a number statement from your diagram and solve. Remember, I want you to pause the video and try to do this by yourself. It's really important that you don't just sit there and always follow along with the video. You need to be trying to pause the video and do some of the work by yourself. You will not always get it right, and that's okay because you are learning. Once you have written your number statement and you have solved it, I want you to press play. Now I want you to estimate and check your answer to see if it is reasonable. If your answer is reasonable, write your answer as a statement. Ready to check? Okay, so this time I had to draw 4 tape diagrams. That's why in this, I know that this is a lot of work. That's why in this problem set there are only 3 questions and it's only one side. So you should be able to put all of your effort into it. All right, so we have that here is how much chocolate the shop sold. And it said that they sold, here's how much cookie dough cones they sold. And it said that they sold 1,078 more peanut butter cones than cookie dough cones, and 999 more vanilla cones than chocolate cones. So if you take a look at the tape model, or excuse me, the tape diagram, it clearly shows you how much more. And I think that's why it's really important that you draw the tape diagram. But the question says, what was the total number? That's why this is where my question mark is. So the first thing I did was I wanted to find out how many peanut butter cones there were. So that's where this math problem added the amount of cookie dough cones to the 1,078, and that gave me 10,402 peanut butter cones. Then I wanted to figure out how much vanilla cones there were, so I added 12,789 to 900. That's where I got 13,788. Now to find the total, I had to add all of these together. That's where I got 46,303. So that's 46,303 ice cream cones. Now, it does not show where I checked for reasonableness. Now, I could do this very quickly. I would round and say, I'm going to say 10,000 chocolate cones, say 9,000 cookie dough cones, peanut butter, I'm going to say 9,000 but plus 1,000, so that's going to give me 10,000 peanut butter cones. And then for vanilla, I'm going to say 13,000 plus 1,000, so we'll say 14,000. Now I can very quickly just add these together. Obviously, I'm going to have all zeros here, and then I have 9 plus 4, which is 13. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I get about 43,000 ice cream cones, which is really close to my answer, which tells me that this is indeed reasonable. All right, last problem. Again, I want you to read this problem by yourself, and then I want you to think to yourself, can you draw something, and if so, what can you draw, and what conclusions can you make from your drawing? Once you have completed your drawing, I want you to press play. Now, from your drawing, I want you to write a number statement from your drawing, and I want you to solve for the answer. How many omelets did they sell in all in June? Once you're finished with that, press play. Now I want you to use estimation to check your answer for reasonableness. If your answer is reasonable, go ahead and write your answer as a statement. When you're ready to check, press play. Okay, so this is your answer. So you can see here that I have how much the restaurant sold in the first week, which is 10,345. And then it said that the second week they sold 1,096 fewer omelets, but it doesn't tell me how many omelets. That's why this is blank. And then it said in week 3 they sold 2,000 more than the first week. So that's why it's got the 10,345 plus the 2,000. And then in week 4 they sold 2,000 fewer than in the first week. So I've got to figure out how much they sold in week 2, how much they sold in week 3, and how much they sold in week 4. So the first thing I did was I took the 10,345 and I subtracted the 1,096. So that told me that in week 2, they sold 9,249 omelets. And then once I figured out how much they sold in week 2, I want you to take a look at what I did here because I solved this a little bit differently. You may not have solved it this way, but if you got the same answer, that's perfectly okay. But once I discovered that in week 2, they had sold 9,249 omelets, I noticed that this 2,000 cancel each other out. It's like I'm adding 2,000 to week 3, but then I'm subtracting 2,000 from week 4. So if I took 10,345 and added it here, and I took 10,345 here, and then I took this as 10,345, and I added it 3 times, that would give me 31,035. And these two thousands cancel each other out. And then I just subtracted, then I just added week 2, which was 9,249. Obviously, that is not the only way to solve this problem, but sometimes it's a good way to look at it a little bit differently. Now, I did notice that there was a typo here, that the restaurant sold 4,284 burgers in June, which is kind of funny. That should be omelets. But the only thing that this does not show is me checking this for reasonableness. So let's go back and take a look at this. So for week 1, I could say that they sold about 10,000 omelets. Week 2, they sold about 10,000 minus 1,000, which will be 9,000. In week 3, they sold about 10,000 plus 2,000, which would be about 12,000. And then in week 4, they sold 2,000 less than 10,000, which would be 8,000. So I know that 12,000 and 8,000 are 20,000. So then I've got 20,000 plus 10,000 plus 9,000, which is 19,000, and that gives me 49,000. That is a little bit more. Excuse me, that's 39,000. That's actually really pretty close to our actual answer. So that tells me that this is reasonable. So you're going to do your exit split by yourself. Take your time and do your best. And remember that even if something is hard, it doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means that you are learning.